Would you be the jerk for asking your own mother to leave? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for telling my mom and dad that they have to get their noses pierced if they want to see my daughter again? My husband and I traveled down to Mexico to visit with my family. I'm an American citizen, my mom and dad are not. My mom and dad got my daughter earrings for her birthday. My daughter's ears are not pierced, she's only 1 year old. I told them that I would save them for her until she was old enough to get her ears pierced. We left my daughter with my parents while we went to meet up with some friends. When we went to pick up my daughter, my mom showed us that we didn't need to wait because they had taken her to get her ears pierced. I got my daughter and I dragged my husband out of there before he lost his crap. We went back to our hotel. I am furious. My husband said that my parents are not allowed to spend time alone with my daughter ever again. I went further. I said that I would not be bringing her or any other kids we might have down here to see my parents. We checked out 3 days early and went home. On the way home, my parents were calling me to see when we were coming over. I ignored all the texts and calls until we were back home in Phoenix. We took a couple of days to think things over and cool down. I finally called them. I asked them not to speak until I was done talking. I told them that my husband and I are upset with them for getting our baby's ears pierced without our permission. I told them that we went back home and probably wouldn't be visiting for a while. They said that my sister and I both had pierced ears when we were babies and that it did not harm us. I said that we weren't going to change our minds. They started getting everyone, including my grandmother, to call me and say I was being ridiculous. I talked with my husband and we came up with a compromise. We agreed that we would resume visits, but not alone time with them, if they both got their noses pierced. They said that we are being stupid and that they are not going to do that. I said no problem and hung up. We've started blocking anyone who tries to call us and give us crap for denying my parents their right to see my daughter. Personally, I think it goes without saying that you shouldn't go and take somebody else's kids and get their ears pierced without ever getting permission. I also haven't really thought about it much before, and I'm willing to have my mind changed with some discourse, but something about going and getting your baby's ears pierced just because seems like a really weird thing to me. It just seems really unnecessary. Pizza.gov said, "Not the jerk. They violated your trust in a huge way, and they have absolutely no right to see your daughter, nor do they have a right to see you. They're confusing rights with wants. They were willing to do semi-permanent damage to your baby directly against your wishes just because they want to decorate the baby. It displays a lack of respect for you and for your child. Their aesthetic wants are more important than the grandchild's feelings. And if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, I did this unnecessary thing to a baby before they were old enough to say no is a terrible way to treat a person. It was very polite for you to save the earring gift for later, until she was old enough to get her ears pierced. They're grown adults. Surely they didn't think this meant later today. If you want the piercing to close up properly, don't use hydrogen peroxide or antibacterial soaps. Use a saline solution on the piercing daily. If the piercing seems like it might already be infected, do not remove the earring. We don't want to close an infection inside the body. I recommend you do talk to a local body piercer about this, or call a local shop that has all their licenses. I say semi-permanent because I don't personally know whether this will leave a scar if or when the piercing closes. It could be permanent, it could go away. I'm not telling this mother to take the earring out because I'm not a piercing professional, and I will not be giving advice about removing fresh piercings without even seeing it. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my father and stepmother that I'll exchange the gift they bought for my daughter? My daughter is turning 5 later this month. We have a trip coming up, so we decided to have her birthday party last Saturday instead. When we got home after the party, we helped our daughter open her gifts. The only ones she didn't open were the ones we realized were jewelry or clothing. She doesn't care about those, only the toys, which me and my husband opened without her. Those were gifted mostly by family members. The jewelry department mainly consisted of necklaces and bracelets. The sole exception was a pair of earrings gifted by my father and his wife. My daughter's ears aren't pierced. We didn't pierce them when she was born, nor do we intend to do so anytime soon. We want to let her decide whether she wants to, and she's never expressed any interest, so me and my husband already knew we'd be exchanging the earrings. Usually we don't tell people we're exchanging a gift they bought for us. This time is different. My stepmother has been pestering me about piercing my daughter's ears since she was born. There's always a different reason why. First, it was because people wouldn't know she was a girl if we didn't. Then it turned into she'll get jealous of her friends and so on. But she always makes the point that girls need to have their ears pierced. She brings it up almost every time we see her. My father doesn't usually comment on it, but has backed her up a few times. Also, my stepmother's never complained about my older son's appearance, so I know this is rooted in sexism. When my father called us the next day to ask what we thought of the earrings, I told him they looked nice. My stepmother joined in and asked, "So you're getting your ears pierced?" I tried to dodge the question, but she later asked it again, so I told them no. I looked at the store's website and found a matching necklace, which we'll exchange the earrings for. There's a price difference, but I'll cover it. Well, they weren't happy. Apparently, my stepmother started crying. My father told me off for thinking about exchanging a thoughtful gift he bought for his granddaughter and said it was wrong of me to dismiss my stepmother's opinion like that. In return, I told him I couldn't take her insistence anymore and she needed to stop obsessing over my daughter's ears. It escalated into a fight. My husband, while 100% on my side otherwise, thinks I didn't need to tell them. Am I the jerk? I think OP's 100% not the jerk, personally. I think OP hit the nail on the head when they said specifically, "You need to stop obsessing over my daughter's ears." If OP saying those words to them does not get through to them how weird and obsessive they're being, I don't know what will, and OP's absolutely in their right to point that out and say it. Tangerine Bouquet said, "Not the jerk. Honestly, I'd never let them babysit your daughter unsupervised because of that level of insistence. Your stepmother pushed. This is more than a reasonable boundary to hold. No, you will not be piercing your daughter's ears. It wasn't a gift, it was an attempted manipulation. Even if it were his side of the family, your husband would be out of line here." This is an example of needing to tell them that the gift was inappropriate, because they knew full well it was. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not wanting previous owner's son in my home/property? My husband, daughter, and I live in a small rural town. We purchased this house with acreage about 4 or 5 years ago from a couple with 2 adult sons. It's a very beautiful custom country French house that the man and his sons built themselves over the course of several years. The house is very luxurious, and so I can see how it's special for them. Yesterday, I was checking our town's Facebook page for updates on things and came across a post of a man asking on how to contact the owners of a house that matched our address because he wanted to show his kid his childhood home, but didn't want to come randomly unannounced, especially since we installed a gate at the entrance. A lot of people gave him ideas on how to look us up on the internet and find our phone numbers and contact us. My husband and I are very private people, and this kind of bothered me. To put a stop to it, I politely commented on the post that we are not interested and apologized. Now, people are calling me a Karen for not wanting them over. I can see why they'd think I'm a Karen, but to be honest, I feel relieved that I was honest because I didn't feel comfortable with having them over in the first place. Am I the jerk? So I completely understand what they're wanting to do, what they're trying to do, but I also understand if you're an insanely private person, you don't want somebody rooting around in your stuff that you own. Like, I get it has a lot of sentimentality to it, and honestly, if I were in OP's position, I'd probably even lean a bit towards the side of maybe even letting them. But these are strangers you don't really know. All you know is that they lived there at one point. I just don't think you can be the jerk for wanting to maintain your privacy. Our next story is, would I be the jerk for banning wife and her family from staff travel privileges for humiliating me? I'm in a bit of a tough spot and I need some perspective on a decision I've made regarding my wife and her family. Recently, I made the difficult choice to ban them from utilizing my staff travel privileges. Let me explain. My wife has a habit of making statements that undermine my professional abilities. She often tells me I don't understand how my company works, questions my knowledge of our leave policies, and suggests I reach out to various departments as if she knows better. Despite my attempts to explain my job and company protocols, she refuses to believe me, and I often have to provide email evidence to prove my point. This behavior reached a breaking point when she humiliated me in front of her family by openly doubting my understanding of my job and my company's policies. It's not that her family has been directly insulting or rude about my work, but I just don't feel comfortable granting them the privileges my job provides when they don't respect it. There have been instances where the company forced me to take leave at inconvenient times due to scheduling concerns, and she would constantly badger me to contact various departments to change it, even though I explained it was beyond my control. Fed up with her attitude towards my work and her lack of respect for my professional knowledge, I made the decision to revoke their access to my staff travel privileges. It wasn't an easy decision, but I believe it's important to set boundaries and stand up for myself. I'm seeking advice on whether I made the right call, or if there might be a better way to handle this situation. Thanks for listening. I don't think OP's the jerk. I mean, it kind of is just like violating a basic level of respect almost. If it gives you ease of mind in all of this, I especially don't think OP's the jerk. Certified proctologist wrote, "Not the jerk, but why does your wife believe she's more knowledgeable about your job than you are?" OP responded, "Well, not the technical aspects of my job. I am a pilot and she is not. More the company policies and privileges. Things like the leave policy on sick days, casual offs, PTOs, scheduled offs, other things like flight delays or how they should handle delays, etc. She seems to imply that I do not understand well how to use my company policies fully to my benefit. Granted, a few times I may have realized something in policies have changed after the fact that I wish I knew before, but in the world of aviation, policies change very often because of endless reasons, and nobody I know or have met have been completely on top of it all of the time. Everything else like vacation planning, sick leave policy to skip a day for fun, or bidding for vacation at a specific time as per my needs and not the company's, we don't get weekends or Christmas off, is secondary. This next story is, am I the jerk, 24-year-old female, for setting a limit on how many times my boyfriend, 29-year-old male, can snooze his alarm and threatening to sleep on the couch when he goes over the agreed limit? Hey everyone, we're at a bit of an impasse here. I'm obviously quite sleep deprived, so sorry if I sound a bit ticked off. My boyfriend Mark works a very early shift requiring him to be at work at 5 a.m. He sets his alarm for 4 a.m., but he has a nasty habit of snoozing it repeatedly. I don't get up for work until about 6:30 to 7:30 a.m. depending on when I start, so obviously my sleep is really disturbed by this. Mark is an incredible boyfriend in nearly all aspects. He's the man I want to marry, but he struggles with ADHD, which can make things difficult. Namely, getting out of bed is a challenge for him. Might be worth noting, but I'm also awaiting official diagnosis, but I'm also fairly certain I'm ADHD or autistic or a mix of the two. So I also find getting up hard and I value my sleep. His alarms make that really hard. It's not just one alarm that goes off either. Mark has somehow managed to set his alarms so that his phone, Apple Watch, and Apple HomePod all go off either at the same time or within minutes of each other. Not even the usual 9 minutes that Apple allows when you hit snooze. There's a different alarm going with different snoozes every few minutes. Yesterday morning, I counted out of spite, between 4 and 5 a.m., Mark's alarms went off 12 times. I wish I was joking. It's gotten to the point now where I just get up at around 4:30 because I just don't want to keep listening to his awful alarm noise. He's tried changing the tone of the alarm, he's tried switching it to music I like instead of the default alarm. None of it helps. As soon as I'm woken up about 5 times by the alarm, there's no going back to sleep for me before I need to leave for work. So I ended up telling Mark this morning that unless he could agree to only snooze his alarm twice, at a maximum, and then he gets up, I will have to sleep on the couch for the foreseeable future. I've done this a couple of times when he surpassed snoozing the alarm 5 times, just to get some peace and quiet. He took this as passive-aggressive and was hurt by it, which did really make me feel bad, but I'm just so exhausted all the time. Every morning, Monday to Friday is like this. I can't take it anymore. He feels I should be more understanding of his condition, but it's hard to be understanding when you're woken up every day in such an awful manner when I don't even have to be awake for another 2 hours or more. Am I the jerk? Edit, wow, this blew up. I won't have time to read everyone's comments, but here's what we've agreed to do. I've spoken with him and he's apologized again. He didn't realize how much it was actually affecting my day beyond just having a crap start to the morning sometimes. The problem was we realized he truly thought I was just going back to sleep once he said goodbye to me, when in reality I was tossing and turning and stewing in my frustration without actually voicing it. He has agreed to set one alarm at 4:30 and he will snooze it once and then get up. If he can't get up, he's given me permission to harass him until he does. So we'll try that for the rest of the week. Hopefully he can just get up and I won't have to bother him, but he's promised he's going to make more of an effort. After that trial period, he'll be left to his own devices. And if he oversleeps, then so be it. We've agreed it's not my responsibility to get him up, and my sleep is more important. Edit 2. Some of these comments are pretty crazy. To be clear, when we discussed it today and I so much as mentioned being the one to take the couch, he stopped me immediately and said if we do sleep separately, I would of course have the bed and he'd sleep on the couch. But neither of us want that. He's not tried to push me out of bed, and he's not abusing me for God's sake. His Apple Watch vibrates, so he's going to use that for his alarm tomorrow with no sound, and hopefully it won't disturb me at all. Neither of us are put my foot down kind of people. We've had a respectful discussion about how we felt, and now it's hopefully resolved. I'm very fortunate to have that, and I can see how a single post would give a bad perspective on our relationship. He also has never used his ADHD as an excuse or an explanation. I'm the one who wrote the post, and I gave that for context and a better understanding of our situation. Why is everyone autistic these days? Who knows? Neurodivergent people tend to flock together, so it's no surprise two of us are under the same roof. He now knows it's affecting me and is making steps to change it. But hey, if I come back in a month and say I left him over this, y'all are welcome to say a big fat I told you so. Obviously, the important thing here is they actually talked about it and being able to talk about it. Now, talk is talk, so hopefully going forward, they can actually just respect the alarm and get up at it, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm right there with you. It's hard for me to get up on the first or even second alarm. Malicious Tacos wrote, "My husband was like this when we first moved in together. At the time, Apple alarms and stuff didn't exist, so he just hit the snooze button on his alarm clock half a dozen times. He's one of those people who can sleep through anything, so he'd happily roll over and sleep some more. I'm someone who has a hard time sleeping. I swear the planets have to be aligned perfectly for me to sleep properly, and my deepest sleep tends to be in the early morning hours. But if I hear an alarm, then that's it. I'm awake." I was so frustrated that I outright told my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, that I would murder him dead if he didn't quit with the snooze button. We didn't have a different place for him to sleep, as we shared our small apartment with a roommate. When I was at my most fed up, I got vicious. His alarm would go off and he'd hit snooze. Immediately, I'd shake him and tell him to get his butt up. I'd be so obnoxious that he'd get up just to get me to stop. I'd plant my feet on his butt and literally push him out of the bed. It took a few months, but eventually he got into the habit of just getting up when the alarm went off the first time. I didn't end up killing him, and we've been together 21 years. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my husband to tell his mom to settle the baby? I, female 36, have a baby, 10 weeks, with my husband, male 36. Our son is amazing and a pretty easy baby. My son already sleeps through the night, which is a godsend. However, this does require a strict nighttime routine of bath, bottle, and reading a story. About an hour and a half before he sleeps, but then he sleeps like a grown adult through the night. The problem is that my mother-in-law has the habit of calling later in the evening when my son is already asleep. She will video call and insist to see the baby and end up calling him until he's awake. We talked to her about calling earlier, but she says she can't call earlier because she's eating dinner and then has to decompress. I've also discussed this with my husband that he shouldn't bring the phone to our son if she calls that late or pick up at all, but he has a hard time saying no to her. I told him that I won't resettle our son just because he can't say no to his mom. A couple nights ago, I was reading myself for bed after putting down our son when the phone rings. Husband does pick up and is saying no to see our son, but my mother-in-law insists and begs so I can hear my husband slowly caving. She can look, but he isn't going to turn the lights on, nor can she wake him up. Spoilers, he does, and she will. When he's walking to the bedroom, I pop my head out and shake no. He shrugs like, "What can I do?" And I tell him, if you wake him, then you will put him back to sleep. Another apologetic shrug. Mother-in-law actually says that she'll be quiet and it will only take a minute. By the time my husband did turn on the light because she couldn't see, and she's called our son awake because she wanted to see his pretty little eyes, I'm already in bed, hearing the entire thing unfold. Phone call ends, my son is crying and fussing. My husband takes him back into the living room to calm him down, but after half an hour comes up and asks me to do it since he's tired and wants to sleep and he has to work tomorrow. I told him I warned him many times. He insists that I can do it because I don't have to work tomorrow. So I tell him, neither does your mom. And since she's the one that woke him, she could settle him back down if my husband wasn't going to do it, but I am not going to do it. He did end up putting our son back to bed, but it took a long while apparently and made him really tired the next day at work. He went to bed early the next day and is now a little distant. Friends are divided, so now I feel like I'm the jerk. Before people jump on my husband, he is a great dad who is the one settling our son down most days, since I'm tired and still recovering. We split duties equally, and if our son wasn't fussy and didn't want to sleep, I would have had no problem staying up late to take him to bed, just not when he's awoken. OP's wholeheartedly not the jerk here. I'd probably do the exact same thing. Listen, I'm not putting the kid back to bed if you're going to insist on waking them up yet again. Now, when they're tired at work the next day, the next time the mom calls and the baby's already asleep, he'll probably think a little bit more seriously about saying no, won't he? P Street 6542 said, "Your son doesn't change his face every single day. She doesn't need to call daily and needs to adhere to the schedule of a newborn child because it is difficult for new parents. She is selfishly obnoxious and has no excuse over the way she's behaving. As for the son, he is your husband and you are defensive of him, but he needs to have boundaries. These boundaries are not only unreasonable, but perfectly adhering to them is going to save both of you from a world of sleepless nights. Since it's his mother being a jerk, it is his responsibility to be firm with her. Otherwise, it will cause other problems as well. Your mother-in-law, though, is a stupid idiot for not using her decompression time now. She can delay that. What is wrong with her?" Our next story is, am I the jerk for being honest about disliking my nephew's name? My sister gave birth to my nephew in January, and she gave him a name that I dislike, which is Philip. The two of us have always been so close, and we always swore we would be honest with each other when asked. That has always been our relationship. We feel it keeps us close and stops hard feelings, because if we don't want to hear something, we just don't ask. There has never been a time I didn't want her honesty, so I'll ask her anything looking for an honest answer. My sister is a little more sensitive, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I get her not asking everything if she feels like it would hurt her feelings. She asked me what I thought of the name because I was the only one who didn't comment about loving the name, according to her. And I'm not saying every single person she meets compliments the name, just that those in her and her husband's circle did. So 2 or 3 weeks after my nephew was born, she asked me if I didn't like his name. She said my reaction was very muted and it made her wonder. So I was honest and told her I didn't like the name, but reassured her I love my nephew very much. She asked some more questions that I answered honestly, and I was even open about names I would use for my future child when asked. My sister made a joke that it was weird to find a topic we were so opposite on, our taste in names, but she was glad we had talked. I didn't think anything more of it, and then a week and a half ago, my sister's husband made a sarcastic remark that he was surprised I would spend money on such a nice gift for my nephew. I ordered a custom blanket for him that has his name on it when I don't even like the name. My sister told him to stop and apologized to me for his reaction. He grumbled and she grumbled back at him. Then he got me alone and told me I'd made my sister cry when I told her I disliked my nephew's name. He asked me how I would like it if she said that to me, and I told him I would expect her to be honest if she did dislike the name I pick for my future kids, and I asked her the question. I said we don't lie to each other, and it's been that way since we were kids. He said he had no idea what kind of name I would like if I dislike Philip, and if I dislike the middle name too, but it takes a special kind of crappy person to tell a new parent they dislike the name they chose for their kid, and he said I broke my sister's heart, which should make me so ashamed. I spoke to my sister after that and apologized for upsetting her. She wanted to know where I learned it, but answered herself before she finished the question. She apologized to me and admitted that she was upset, but that she should have known better than to ask the question, that I didn't go out of my way to give feedback on the name, and she knows herself better than that. She apologized for her husband again and told me not to listen. But then her husband reached out again and told me my sister is trying to spare my feelings. So, am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk. They were just being completely honest. My question is, why does the brother-in-law keep bringing this up? Do they feel the need to try to beat OP down and make them feel guilty for their opinion on a name? Like he's just trying to make OP feel like an awful person and continuing to churn drama. This next story is, am I the jerk for asking my mother to leave because she won't stop wasting my food? My baby sister just had a baby and our mom came to help. My sister and her husband live in a tiny apartment with no room for my mom. I agreed to let her stay with me since I live only 8 blocks away. It's walkable. My plan was to Uber her over in the morning and pick her up after work. I eat only one meal a day during the week, supper. I have coffee for breakfast and some fruit for lunch. On Saturday, I treat myself to a good breakfast. And Sundays, I take the woman I'm dating for brunch. My mother decided that this was unacceptable. She got up early and went through my fridge and freezer to make me breakfast. I told her that I appreciate it, but that I don't usually eat breakfast. She said that was stupid. I very clearly communicated to her that she was welcome to eat anything in my home, but please not make me breakfast, as it was a waste. She made breakfast the following day. I walked out without eating it. I figured worst case scenario, I could eat it for supper. She threw it out since I didn't eat it. I told her once more to please not waste my food. She made breakfast for me the next day. I asked her if she was developing dementia. She is wasting my food for no good reason. I'm not poor or anything, but wasting food is a pet peeve of mine. She said I was being ungrateful for her help, and she was doing it to be nice since I was letting her stay with me. I explained to her again that I did not need, want, require, or desire breakfast during the week. She said she understood. She made me breakfast the next day. I had had enough. I took her luggage with me when I dropped her off at my sister's home. I told my doorman that my guest was no longer welcome. I got so many messages from her and my sister all day long. Even my dad called me to ask me to change my mind. I said no. He had to drive up and rent an Airbnb close to my sister because my mom was too scared to stay by herself. He's retired, so he didn't miss work or anything. My sister came over alone to talk to me. She said I was being a complete butt and that I could afford the food my mom was wasting. I said I could, but that I didn't want to. She literally used up 2 months worth of my food. She made up huge breakfasts that I didn't even eat. I keep all my bacon in individual servings. She thawed out 3 for every breakfast, 1 for her and 2 for me, and I ate 0. My father has asked me to let her back in. I said I would, under the condition that she understand that my food is completely off limits to her. She can pay for her own food. I said I would make room in the fridge and freezer for her. She said I was being ridiculous and petty. So my dad is staying neutral, but my mom and sister think I'm a jerk. My girlfriend thinks the whole thing is hilarious and refuses to get involved. Yeah, I don't think OP's the jerk here. As long as she's all there and coherent, she is willfully listening to OP, looking them dead in the eye and saying, okay, sure, and then just disrespecting them again. It doesn't matter if OP's living in the penthouse suite and is making millions of dollars. They don't want to waste their food. That's a boundary, a very reasonable boundary, and you're not respecting them, their living situation, or their belongings. Honestly, if anything, it sounds like she's just trying to keep going until you just give in and let her do what she wants. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.